Hello, everybody. It's Monday today, and my week's all screwed up because we usually do this on Sundays, but because of one of the Geezer's travel plans, we put this off to Monday, and now everything's just screwed up for the entire week. You know how that goes. I'm here. I'm Scott here in South Florida. There's Dan up in St. Louis area, Bob up around Kansas City, and we're going to be talking about Beatles documentaries today. Specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about the Peter Jackson film coming up. Actually, it's not a film anymore; it's a TV miniseries, but it's called Get Back. I'm sorry, it's called The Beatles: Get Back, and we're going to talk about that and touch on the Let It Be albums, which is where all this generated, and a couple of other related things. But anyway, before we go there, Bob, anything going on this week that grabs your interest?
Yeah, the theme this week is going to be vintage rock stars coming back with new material. So starting out, prog rock legends Yes have announced that they're going to be releasing a brand new studio album in October called The Quest, and it's their first collection of original material since 2014. The new album is going to feature 11 tracks, and it features new artwork from Roger Dean, who has designed most of the band's otherworldly album covers. And The Quest is going to be released as a limited edition deluxe 2 LP package and 2 CDs, plus a Blu-ray box set. And they're going to have a limited edition 2 CD and Blu-ray art book, a gatefold 2 LP, and then a digipack and a digital album. Now, this is not the classic Yes from our youth. Steve Howe is, I believe, the only close to original member left. Did a little research, and Yes has had 19 full-time members since they first formed in 1968. And then they also had a splinter group that was called Yes, featuring John Anderson, Trevor Rabin, and Rick Wakeman. So, but anyway, Yes is coming back.
Yeah, there have been 3 or 4 different splinter groups. There was one: Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe.
Yeah.
There have been 3 or 4. At a time, there were like 2 different versions of Yes flying around out there, and and they would fight over the use of the name. I think Alan White is still in the band. He joined them later in '73 or something after Close to the Edge was recorded. Steve Howe was not a founding member, but none of the founding members are still left. They're all gone.
Howe showed up though.
Howe is the one who's been around the longest, although he disappeared for about 8 years in the mid '80s.
Yeah. So. But anyway, I thought it was relevant.
So the last original founding member that was left in the band was Chris Squire, but he died about 5 or 6 years ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
Isn't John Anderson still alive?
Oh, well, he's still alive, but he's not in Yes anymore. He hasn't been with Yes for a while. They've had 2 different singers since John Anderson left. Yeah.
But anyway, I thought it relevant since I know that that's going to be a topic coming up for one of our discussions a little bit later. Then Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull back in March teased that the band's first album in almost 20 years called The Zealot Gene. And they started working on this album in 2017. And back in March, Anderson had said he was about 3/4 done with the recording, but had no idea when it would be released. But now they've signed with Sony Music and said that they're going to release their album in early 2022. So anyway, something new coming from Ian Anderson.
Is he using Jethro Tull name, or is he?
Well, it's the other musicians with him. They have a guitarist named Joe Parrish James, another guitarist named Florian O'Faley, drummer Scott Hammond, keyboardist John O'Hara, and bassist David Goodyear. I don't recognize any of those names.
But my question is it being released under the Jethro Tull brand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's being released as a Jethro Tull album.
Okay.
Okay, then, Doors guitarist Robbie Krieger will be publishing his first ever memoir titled The Night on Fire, Living, Dying, and Playing Guitar with the Doors. And that book will be released October 12th. And the book is going to tell Krieger's story in a series of vignettes from the pawn shop where he purchased his first guitar, his teenage drug bust, his first writing sessions with Jim Morrison, and including the Doors' awkward first concerts in backyards and empty bars. Says he's also going to share never before told stories from his tenure with the Doors, including his perspective on the legendary moments like the infamous New Haven incident and the recording sessions of the band's classic albums. So it's going to be interesting to hear from Krieger. I've kind of always thought of him as the quiet Doors, just like Harrison being the quiet Beatle. And says Krieger's also going to go into heartbreaking detail about his life's most difficult struggles, ranging from drug addiction to his twin brother's mental breakdown, his own battle with cancer. So while he's been working on his memoir, he did his first solo album in more than 10 years called The Ritual Begins at Sundown, which is an instrumental album that is heavily jazz influenced and also took inspiration from Frank Zappa. This one is about Bruce Springsteen. And on the Born to Run album is a song called Thunder Road. And the lyrics to the songs were printed on the album. And in Thunder Road, the lyrics say that Mary's dress waves but does not sway. So whether the dress sways or waves apparently became a huge thing on social media here over the last couple of weeks. And that led New Yorker magazine to actually contact John Landau, who co-produced the Born to Run album and is Springsteen's manager. And Landau confirmed that the lyrics are supposed to be Mary's dress sways. And he said that all typos in Springsteen material will be corrected. And the lyrics that are posted on Springsteen's website have been updated with this. Now, so how did this become an issue? It's due to Maggie Haberman, who is a reporter for the New York Times. And on July 3rd, she attended Springsteen's Broadway show, and she innocently tweeted out a screen door slams and Mary's dress sways. And suddenly all of the people on the internet who believe that it should be Mary's dress waves took to the airwaves, and that led to a 2-week debate over what the actual lyrics are supposed to be. And then John Landau finally had the definitive word on it. But closing that whole little story out, Steve Van Zandt could have ridden to the rescue and clarified it, because apparently Van Zandt expounds on a lot of subjects on Twitter. And he was asked about the lyrics, and in response to that, Van Zandt, the E Street guitarist, wrote, "Oy vey, get this Bruce lyric shit out of my feed."
Well, that's pretty much what I was saying, because I've been seeing that stuff for all week. It's like, God, who cares?
I know, that's why, but
why hasn't somebody like gone to the source and asked them?
Apparently Springsteen, I guess didn't respond to any questions about this, and that's why they wound up going to Landau. I wasn't aware that it was an issue before this, and I wasn't aware.
I started seeing it show up on the debate on Twitter about a week ago. Anyway, yeah, Peter Jackson is. I guess it's probably wrapped up by now, but or he may still be working on it. But the Beatles Get Back, which is going to be about a 6-hour documentary culled from from about 56 hours of tapes that they found sitting around from the rehearsals for the Beatles at the Twickenham studios and in their rooftop concert on Apple back in 1969. And I guess it's it's basically just going to be Peter Jackson director's cut of the original 1970 film Let It Be, which has been out of circulation for about 40 years now. I just checked on that, and Let It Be was issued on VHS videotape back in the early 80s, but then it got taken out of circulation, mostly at Paul McCartney's request, because McCartney didn't like it. And it never got released on DVD. It hasn't been released to streaming. The Beatles Get Back, Peter Jackson's project, will be released on Disney Plus on 25th of November of 2021, which I guess is probably right around Thanksgiving this year. And I did learn that that a remastered version of the 1970 movie Let It Be will be released in as a tie-in with that. So we will get to see that again. Anyway, Jackson's movie started out as it started out as a movie, as a theatrical cut, and then the COVID happened, and he was going through tapes, and for a few different reasons, I guess, the theatrical movie turned into a 6-hour streaming documentary, which I think is going to be done in 3 2-hour parts. Over 55 hours of footage, 140 hours of audio from the original project. But yeah, Jackson was given access to all this stuff and said, go at it. He got the blessing of Paul McCartney, he got Ringo Starr's blessing, and Yoko Ono and Olivia Harrison also are all in on this. So everybody's happy that this thing is coming out, and even McCartney feels that it's okay to go ahead and release Let It Be as part of this, because he thinks it will be sort of a counter narrative to what people have attributed to the Let It Be film, is that the Beatles were fighting all the time and they weren't happy, and there was a stressful time. And McCartney denies that that's the case. McCartney says that everything was fine when all this happened. Anyway, Bob, I think you probably have been reading about this for a while. Can you add some details about what's going on with this thing?
Well, you covered the salient points as I understand them. And I think the key thing, and you touched on it, is the original documentary painted the recording sessions as very disruptive and such, and that Jackson and the Beatles claim that's not true, and that this new documentary is going to reflect, what went on in the studio more correctly. And I was really surprised when you said that they're going to be reintroducing the original documentary, yes, considering the dichotomy between the two. One thing that struck me, though, is we're now 51 years out from the release of Let It Be, nearly 60 years from when the Beatles, first sprang into existence in the U.S., and now we've got what appears to be great anticipation for this documentary. We've got the new documentary about Paul McCartney on Hulu, and just impressed upon me the lasting power of these people, that we're getting all of this stuff coming out, 6 decades later, and kind of leads me to wonder, 100 years from now, are we still going to be seeing Beatles documentaries, and are they still going to be holding this kind of exalted place in pop music? So that struck me as kind of interesting.
One thing I do want to add on this on the Jackson documentary is that as Peter Jackson apparently is he likes to tell the whole story. He does.
Yeah, he does not make.
He likes to
short
stretch
movies.
it out. He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't believe in leaving anything out. But in that, in that spirit, the 1970 movie Let It Be ended with 20. The last 20 minutes of that movie was from the rooftop concert. Well, apparently that rooftop concert lasted for 42 minutes, and the Peter Jackson documentary will include the full 42-minute rooftop concert instead of a
I read 52
20-minute
minutes.
edited version of it. I'm sorry.
I read that it was 52-minute long.
Well, it says here 42 minutes. What I have in front of me here, but no, 52. But anyway, the point being that the full rooftop concert will be in this instead of an edited version of it. Did any of you guys get a chance to watch the McCartney 321 on Hulu? It aired a couple of days ago. Yeah, I spent yesterday watching it. It's 6 30-minute episodes.
Oh, okay.
And it really is. It's just all it is Paul McCartney and Rick Rubin, the legendary longtime record producer. Rubin and McCartney just standing around a soundboard that's loaded with a bunch of Beatles tapes, and they're just talking about Beatles music and Paul, and it was very good. I highly recommend you guys take a look at this. I really love this thing. I figure 3 hours of just Rubin and McCartney standing around talking, but you get a real feel of McCartney, the person here. I mean McCartney isn't. He isn't being Paul McCartney. He's just being this old guy Paul who remembers this stuff. It's really cool. You see a human side of McCartney that I have rarely ever seen, because he's usually a guy who knows the camera's on him and he plays the camera. That's not the case here. He lets his guard down and talks, and part of that might be because Rubin, who knows how recording and who knows how things work in a studio, was directing a conversation with him. So Paul was probably a little intellectually challenged by having this conversation with him about how things really happen in the studio. It's really good. About 90% of it covers the Beatles. They talk. They touch a couple of times about McCartney's solo career, but who cares about that? Out of the 6 hours, probably 5 hours and 45 minutes of it is covering the Beatles, and it's very interesting. You hear a lot of the same old stories you've been hearing for years, but there are a lot of good insights that McCartney offers that nobody ever knew before.
Rubin has a history of working with musicians at the tail end of their careers and rejuvenating them and coming up with new material, like he did with Johnny Cash and Neil Diamond and several others. So he's good at this.
I don't know his. I just know the name, and I know that he's been around. I think he was one of the co-founders of Columbia Records, wasn't he? With him and a partner, but I know. But he's been around a long time. I don't know the particulars of his career. I would highly recommend you guys watch that. It's 3 hours well worth your time. It goes by pretty quickly, and it's split up into 6 30-minute chunks. So it gives you a breather between the between the things. It's pretty interesting. Anyway. What do you have any gut feeling? What are you anticipating on the Peter Jackson documentary? Dee, is this something you're looking forward to, or?
Yes. It's interesting that when the Beatles wanted to do the project for Let It Be, and they thought, okay, we'll bring cameras into the recording studio and kind of show, behind the door, how we craft our music and songs. And then there was so much of it that was, put in the closet. And I remember watching Let It Be when it first came out theatrically, and I was kind of, I guess I wanted to hear more music. There was a couple points on the rooftop concert. I enjoyed that, although I wish they would have shown more of Billy Preston playing the keyboards, when they're up there. But now with this, I'm really interested. There's 80 hours plus of film that
Yeah, 55 hours. He's editing
55.
55 hours down to about 6. Or I'm
And-
sorry, down to how many is that going?
I thought it was 3 2-hour sessions. 6
Yeah,
hours.
6 hours. Yeah, that's right. 6 hours. Yeah.
And so-
Three 2-hour episodes, they're calling it. And yeah, one of the things when he was putting this together, he's putting it together as a theatrical film, and he just said that, Peter Jackson, as Peter Jackson is wont to do, said that, a 2.5-hour movie that's not enough time to tell the story.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna do a general sweep of it. I don't think he's gonna try to hide any, if there was bickering or whatever. But I think on the upswing is you'll see them working, and then I think when they got to the rooftop concert, and I don't know if you've seen clips of "Don't Let Me Down" on there, which they were kicking into that, and they actually gave Billy Preston a few seconds trying to play the. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and it's just another example. Bob already talked about it, that it's like another hidden treasure you find in the mythology and the influence of the Beatles. It's so much there, and of course it'll probably be a huge hit when it comes to its release. I'm looking forward to more or less seeing them working things out in the studio. How did they craft a song? And from what I've read in the past, they would rehearse enough, but they wouldn't just do a lot of unnecessary takes on a song. Although the one I heard that the other Beatles were sick of is when they had to play endless takes on Maxwell's Silver Hammer. Of course, that was Abbey Road, but it's interesting with on the Let It Be. I hope to see the version of where John is playing like a slide lead to Harrison's song. I think it's that on For You Blue. I believe that one. So yeah, I mean, I don't have anything critical wise to really offer, but that's what I'm looking forward to. And hopefully Jackson's film will set the record straight that I think the eventual breakup was more for legal reasons rather than personal reasons. I don't think it was this big vendetta, although I don't think Yoko helped, and Alan Klein. That was, I think, the big split with McCartney and the rest of the Beatles.
Yeah, I think Klein played the biggest role.
Yeah.
Well, may I cut in?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm more intrigued by the documentary now after going back and listening to Let It Be, and then for the first time in my life hearing Let It Be Naked. And I played the hell out of Let It Be when I was young, and then I listened to Let It Be Naked, and minus all of the Phil Spector embellishments, and it's like going to a high school reunion and seeing this girl you knew who was ugly in high school, who's now drop dead gorgeous, who says she still has a crush on you, and and so I just fell in love with the new version, the naked version. And they omitted a couple incomplete songs, Dig It and Maggie May, and they added Don't Let Me Down, which before had only been a B-side to the Get Back single. And I think the naked version, really captures more what they wanted to do when they went into the studio. It was just 4 guys getting back to the basics and playing live in the studio. So I'm now more looking forward to the documentary to see if it really reflects that feeling. And like I say, I think there's some tremendous songs on Let It Be. but that the naked version just, wow, it's like a totally different album.
Yeah, Let It Be Naked. That was yeah. The original Let It Be was released in May of 1970. Let It Be Naked was, I believe, it was George Martin's son. George Martin had died by then, but actually, I don't see him listed as a producer.
I thought it was an
So,
effort.
so maybe I'm misremembering that, but I'm looking at it now. Yeah, three producers on here, or three names that I don't recognize. But it was a project initiated by McCartney apparently, and this was in 2003. And McCartney initiated this project mostly because McCartney always felt that Spector ruined the song "Long and Winding Road" with the string orchestrations, and so McCartney wanted this wanted that song redone, and so he just got the idea to just redo the whole album. And it actually was a hit back then. I was surprised to know that that it actually hit number 5 on the U.S. Billboard 200 after it was released. I didn't think it was that big of a deal at the time.
I don't know how I missed it. I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit that I had never listened to it.
And I've been listening to it for a few years off and on. And when I first heard it, I thought this is interesting. But you know what? I've been listening to the original and Let It Be Naked back to back about 3 or 4 times in the last few days. And I don't know. I don't know if Let It Be Naked is an improvement.
Oh, I think it is.
And I mean, I find it interesting because if you go back to the original, I mean, Spector only embellished 3 tracks on it. It wasn't like the whole album he did it. It was just the Long and Winding Road, Across the Universe, and one other. Anyway, I can't find it right now, but it wasn't the whole album that Spector threw a bunch of strings on top of or anything. But what I missed from Let It Be Naked is I loved all the between tracks chatter, most of the stuff from Lennon, where Lennon is just just mugging for the microphone, and Spector left a lot of that stuff in. And to me that gave it more of an intimate close-up feel than Let It Be Naked does, when they strip all that out and basically cleaned up the production on a couple of the songs.
After listening to both versions, I now find the studio chatter distracting, and also it's not accurate, because there's where after is it after Get Back, Lennon says, on behalf of the band, I want to thank you and I hope we pass the audition.
Yeah.
He never said that in the studio. He said that at the end of the rooftop concert. And so Spector took that from the rooftop concert and added it to the studio track. And after learning all of that, now when I listen to it, that stuff just distracts me. And I also read that, I guess, when Let It Be was first released, it took some critical hits because people thought it was kind of disjointed and sort of thrown together. And after not having to listen to Dig It and Maggie May, which were incomplete, and listening to the entirety of Don't Let It Be Down, I think it's a stronger album, and I think they refreshed it, and it's got more punch to it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the idea behind Let It Be Naked was to imagine it as an album, where that really wasn't what the original Let It Be was. The original Let It Be was just supposed to be a document of their rehearsals. It was just supposed to be real organic, and it was disjointed, and there was a lot of pieces and parts and things thrown in there, and then Spector just couldn't help himself, I guess, and he put the wall of sound on a couple of 3 tracks, which
what I read,
which honestly, McCartney was the only one of the 4 that was upset by that. The other three just thought it was fine, but that was just, but to me that was just McCartney being McCartney. I don't know. It's different. I'm not saying it's any worse, but I don't necessarily think it's enough of an improvement that it should replace the original in the catalog.
On the original album, Let It Be, in fact, the song Let It Be, when it goes to Harrison's solo, it was muted, I thought, on the original. And then there's another version, which it's louder and it's more of a biting solo that Harrison took. And then on when I listened to Let It Be Naked, I thought it was, maybe it was a different solo, and but I didn't think it was as
Let It Be Naked. A lot of them were different takes than what were on the originals, and on Let It Be Naked, a lot of them were an edit of 2 or 3 different takes, which you can't say that Let It Be Naked is more organic than the original, because Let It Be Naked is very heavily edited from a lot of different takes, and even to the point where at a couple of times on Dig a Pony and on Two of Us and on Don't Let Me Down, the producers actually went in and digitally redid a couple of Lennon's takes because he had made a mistake or he flubbed a word or something. So any kind of claim that this is more organic than the original is just not true.
Well, I don't. I guess it's a debate that can never be resolved. But I do have to wonder if Let It Be, as it was released, is really what the band intended, or is Let It Be Naked?
Well, no, it wasn't what the band intended.
And they kind of walked away from it unfinished, and the inspector stepped in at the request of their manager or producer. I can't remember what the exact story supposedly is, but the studio comments, there's that comment that Lennon makes before they start Let It Be, which I interpret as a sarcastic comment about, now we're going to do our religious thing or something like that, because supposedly he didn't like Let It Be. And I think that's just like kind of a cheese dick comment, that detracts from, it's McCartney's song, and if you are a group collaborating, this is McCartney's message, and and you back him on doing it like he backs you on what you want to do. So I think leaving that sarcastic comment in there after listening to it, after listening to the original and then listening for the first time to the naked version, I just thought the studio, the chatter distracted me. And I had to say, Lennon's comment about, Let It Be was just not necessary. And then I guess there's amongst serious Beatles people, there's a debate about whether Let It Be should actually be called an album. Some people, I guess, argue that it should be called a project, not an actual album. And then there's the debate about whether it's actually the Beatles' true last album, or whether Abbey Road should be the last album, and which I thought was kind of an interesting debate that will again lead you nowhere. But
Abbey Road was recorded after they abandoned what was then called the Get Back project. Which the Get Back project basically was, and it was instigated by McCartney, where they decided they wanted to, after doing Coming Off the White Album and Sgt. Pepper's and Magical Mystery Tour and all that, where they really started, where they really doing a lot of experimenting, studio experimenting and stuff like that. McCartney wanted to quote, get back to basics and just do a rock and roll album. And the idea was to film all this stuff and put together a TV documentary. His plan was to do a TV concert for the Beatles, to do a TV concert. And these were rehearsals and working up new material for this TV concert. And then they were going to take this footage from their rehearsals and everything and just make an hour documentary of that to lead into the TV concert they were going to do. And then when that whole project got abandoned, for whatever reason, a lot of people say that it got abandoned because they just didn't feel the material was good enough. But anyway, but when they decided to abandon that, then Michael Lindsay Hogg came along, and who was a guy who produced all of their promo videos before. And he decided, well, I'll take all this, there was going to be this TV documentary, and he turned it into a feature film, just a cut and paste sort of deal with turned it into a feature film. The Beatles walked away from it. George Martin walked away from it. They went and did Abbey Road. When Abbey Road was finished and released, and that's when the breakup started happening. At some point, Lennon, Harrison, and Ringo hooked up with Spector and told Spector, well, go ahead and pull together what you can and make an album out of it. And McCartney was dead set. He opposed it from the beginning. He never did like this, and they did it. And it's been a bone of contention with McCartney ever since that happened. Yeah.
And
but be that as it may, speak ill of it, or McCartney likes it or doesn't like it. Be that as it may, the album anyway. I don't know about the film. The film's been gone so long, but the album is so, it was so long ago, and it's become part of the cultural history, and and there's some good stuff on there. There's some stuff on there that's not so good, but it's it's become part of the cultural history, and it just you can't rewrite it. you can't rewrite it.
Sure you can.
No,
you can make it better. We're in the era now of revisionist history. So
yeah, but that's a whole nother,
yeah, these big Beatles projects, it seems like, the Beatles, it was 50 years ago when the Beatles broke up. And it seems like, we're in a pattern now where every 25 years there comes this big Beatles revisit project, because about 25 years after the Beatles broke up, in the mid 90s, what was it, 93 or 94 or something, there was this big project here, the Beatles
anthology. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that was a huge thing back in the day. And so, yeah, here we are 25 years after that, and now we're revisiting the Beatles again. So I guess in sometime in the 2070s we'll have another one.
I think part of that is, maybe the demographics are pushing it. It's going to be the baby boomers and their children. If their parent, if the boomers, insisted their children sit down and listen to the Beatles music, and maybe part of it's a little bit of nostalgia, but I think for a lot of baby boomers, it was, it's just another part of kind of continuing Beatlemania. If you happen to be over 65 or even 60, it's almost, hard to define.
Yeah, but I think that the Beatles, maybe far more than any other rock group, transcend the generations. And my grandson showed up here one time with a T-shirt with believe it was the Pac-Man characters reproducing the walk on Abbey Road. And so my daughter's like, Dad, look at Aiden's shirt. And I was like, oh, cool. So I started telling Aiden about Abbey Road. And of course, the 8-year-old kid's giving me this blank look. So I said, okay, you got to see this. So I open up YouTube and I start playing a clip from the Rooftop concert. And it was, I think, Don't Let Me Down. And he's about 1 minute into it and goes, that's boring, and walked away. Okay, this is not my grandson. I just own him now, But, the fact that, they made Pac-Man into Abbey Road, and assuming that, that photo was so famous that the generation, even young people would know what it means. I think and when you consider, God, how many times have Beatles songs been covered by different people, even still being covered today. There's something there in the Beatles catalog for nearly everybody. You've got their pop stuff from their early careers. You got the psychedelia from the Sgt. Pepper's era. Then, you got them getting back to some good basic rock and roll. So they run the gamut of listening pleasures. But I had one little thing I wanted to add that I thought was kind of interesting. Lindsay Hogg, the guy that directed the original documentary, from an interview I read with Ringo Starr, he wanted an ending to the documentary that would kind of blow everybody away. So Ringo says that they all planned to play live somewhere, but at the end they're like, yeah, we don't want to haul our equipment someplace. And I guess, they hadn't played live in such a long time. So the idea came up to, let's go up to the rooftop and do it. And then Ringo says when they got up to the top, suddenly George Harrison's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this. And Ringo says, yeah, I was having second thoughts of it. And then supposedly, according to Ringo, John Lennon looks at him and says, F it, let's just do it. And so they did the Rooftop concert, which is now maybe one of the most famous live performances, in rock history. So.
Yeah, and since you mentioned the Rooftop concert again, it was Harrison that insisted let's bring Billy on, and I think maybe that helped the overall atmosphere of it, and then of course he went on to play at the Bangladesh concert that Harrison sponsored. So I think there was, and I've heard Billy's version of My Sweet Lord. It's quite it's really pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, he did work with the Rolling Stones too, and I remember seeing the Bangladesh movie, way back in the day when it was in theatrical release.
Oh my God! I forgot about that. There was a movie on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that?
Good question.
Harrison also gathered, I think, half of Badfinger on the stage. Pete Ham and the other player.
Oh yeah.
And of course Clapton, and then of course there had to be a section for Indian music and Ravi Shankar.
Yes, yeah, that's the part that I've always found boring.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody went up and went to the, get a beer or soda or something.
Yeah, the concert for Bangladesh, 1972.
Yeah.
What happened to that?
Yeah, the only way
that's just completely out of circulation now.
And I think that was the first time that Harrison performed "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" with Clapton on stage.
Was that Harrison's first public appearance after the Beatles, or
I believe, big scale appearance. I don't recall him going on any tour.
Actually, I'm sorry. I'm still on what happened to the movie, but I did find here that it was released on DVD in 2005. So there's a DVD of it out there somewhere. I'll go search around somewhere at some point, see if that's on any streaming services. My God, I forgot all about that.
Yeah. So George, gathered up some of his friends, and then of course Badfinger, they signed. They were under Apple Records, so it was just bring Pete Ham and I forget the other bass, the other member from Badfinger that was on that. But yeah, it was a big deal. It was the first, large scale benefit concert put on and sponsored by, rock musicians. And
Wasn't Dylan part of that too?
I don't remember Dylan.
that I don't remember. Seemed like it was predominantly a lot of English musicians and Ravi Shankar.
Going back to the Beatles' lasting popularity, and some of the things when I was watching this McCartney documentary, a lot of things were becoming clear to me when they were going back and revisiting and going into specific things about some of the recording process and everything. It started occurring to me is that they were the first to do a lot of things. When Paul wrote Yesterday and brought it in, and the rest of the band said, there's nothing we can do to this. Just grab your guitar and go record it. And then George Martin had the idea, well, let's put strings on it. And Paul's going, we can't do that. We can't do that. We're a rock band. We can't put strings on it. George Martin said, well, let's just try it, and we'll see how it works. We'll see how it happens. And it turns out, it turned out to be a great track with strings on it. Well, that was that was probably the first rock and roll era recording to ever have an orchestra on it.
Yeah, and it was,
but things like that, and the other thing that got me too was like, how are people making albums now for a lot, especially new artists coming along? How a lot of them making art? They're going into a studio they have set up in their garage or in a spare bedroom or something with their laptop, and they're just sitting down and playing some instruments and making this do-it-yourself album. Well, you know who the first person who did that was? Of McCartney's first solo album. That's what he did.
He played all the instruments.
And he had some equipment sitting around, and he went off and licked his wounds from the Beatles breakup with Linda, and off to this farm in Scotland. And he just got himself some equipment and threw it in a room together and decided just to go sit around and play in a room for a couple of 3 days and work up some new material. Bing, bang, boom. He had an album.
Yeah, all the years of the Beatles recording and working with George Martin, McCartney had a good idea about the recording process.
Oh, of course. By the time of Abbey Road and all that, they all knew what they were doing in a studio. They all went to school.
Yeah, and I think all the talk about the fifth Beatle and all that, to me, there's no doubt in my mind the fifth Beatle was and always it will be George Martin.
Well, yeah, especially in the back half of their career when they quit touring and they became just strictly a studio band for 2 or 3 years, however long that was.
Yeah,
put out a lot of material in those records that were just that were so innovative, and and a lot of that with George Martin.
Here was a guy that was classically trained producer, and then you get to the Revolver album, and look what the Beatles did on that one, especially the experimental one, the Lennon tune, Tomorrow Never Knows.
Right.
And in that same LP, you had some really lovely ballads like Here, There, and Everywhere, and I think that was the first LP that George recorded a sitar based song.
Right.
So, he gave them room. So
the way that McCartney, he never explicitly said it, but just you kind of come to the conclusion from listening to McCartney talk in this documentary that, first of all, George Martin, you always think that George Martin was this wizened old record producer when he hooked up with the Beatles. He wasn't. He was still a kid. He was just 3 or 4 years older than the Beatles, maybe 5 years older than the Beatles. And he was a young producer when they recorded the first album. And so he was just getting his career started too, but listen to McCartney tell it. The great thing about that is that the Beatles would go in and they would say, well, we'd like to try to do this. We'd like to try to do that. And people say, well, no, that's not the way it's done. There's a way to do it this way. Or George Martin was he's sitting there going, yeah, let's try that. That sounds like a good idea. Let's try that. So it's just this simpatico that happened, with these personalities that met up. That George Martin was, he was still young, but he was an established producer by the time, because he'd done a little bit of work for a couple of years, and he'd got his career started, but he'd been there, and he had his foot he had a foothold enough that he could do things that he wanted to do without somebody telling him, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, they gave
he was quite adventurous. He had sort of a pioneering spirit about him, and instead of saying, when McCartney or Lennon or somebody say, come up with some sort of idea or say, well, let's make this happen, Martin wasn't the guy who said, well, no, that can't happen. That's not the way we do it, or that doesn't do it. And Martin would say, well, yeah, let's try it. And then he would add his own little flourishes to it. And it just kind of became this symbiotic relationship with them.
Yeah, I think he was sort of like their uncle mentor figure in the studio. He was, let's see, I think he was old. I know he was older than the Beatles. I think he was born in 1926. So he was about 14 years older than Lennon.
Was it that much? Okay, I was thinking it wasn't that, but okay.
But he did.
That was my phone. That was somebody sent me a text.
But it was great that he lived to be like 90 or 91, and assisted with other projects. And to bring it all back, there was just so many things that happened that with the Beatles, it's like I think there was a little bit of transcendence or magic dust that they hit so many marks so early and just influenced everybody. I thought it was interesting the covers that they chose to do early. They covered a Carole King Joplin song. They covered the country western song so Ringo could sing it, Act Naturally, which
right.
I want to say, was it not Hoyt Axton, but it's a pretty popular country western song. And they did a little bit of everything.
Owens, I think.
That's it, Buck Owens, right? So who does that? The Beatles do it. And then who goes off? George convinces the Beatles and a couple friends, I think we need to go to India and spend time with the Maharishi. And, they respected George. Yeah, let's do that. And let's bring Donovan along. And let's bring Mia Farrow along and her sister. And of course, and then that exposed Indian music to everybody. And they got some pretty good songs out of it. Sexy Sadie, which was, I think, kind of a slight rebuke to, I think, Maharishi was just a kind of a little bit of a car salesman.
Dear Prudence was about Mia Farrow's sister.
Yeah, there's a side story with that. You probably came across it. Years later, Mia Farrow's sister goes and she gets married and she has kids and they're going to school. And it was a day at school they said, or write a paper about somebody in your family was famous. So her son goes to school, writes this paper that her mother had a song written about the Beatles. So then at the next parent teachers meeting, all these kids and parents, they came up to Mia Farrow's sister, Prudence. They all wanted her autograph.
Great story.
So there you go.
Well, I'm going to be ashamed to admit this, but Across the Universe, I never understood the words that Lennon was singing in the chorus. And when I was listening to it on my iPad, I popped up the lyrics and I saw the line. I was like, huh? So I had to Google what it meant. And it was a shout out to a guru named Dev. And so, so you're talking about the Hindu spiritualism stuff. And I just thought, I never knew what he was singing. I couldn't understand it. And so it was a foreign language and it was a tribute to a guru. But yeah. You were talking about the innovative stuff that Martin did. I think that was also a reflection of the times, as you're dealing in an era when money from music came from like record sales, and you would have a corporation that might be willing to back you in the studio to come up with something that would sell. And now we're in an era when income is generated from performances, not from record sales.
Well, yeah, that was kind of true for everybody, not just George Martin, but of course,
so in some ways,
the Beatles and George Martin, obviously, especially by the time 1966 and 1967 rolled around, they were given a lot more leeway than most people would. But that was I get the sense that in the music industry back in those days, anyway, it was more of an open, accepting, less rigid sort of industry back then. That people were that most people were encouraged to let their freak flags fly. As I say.
You imagine
we're now it's just it's a different atmosphere.
I mean, could you imagine though an established artist today going to his or her record company and saying, you know what, I don't want to tour anymore. I just want to make studio albums. Yeah. How they're going to react to it.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're a legacy artist, I don't see it, but
I think it's, in some ways it's easier to maybe record music today because, I've got a friend of mine that plays in a, classic rock cover band, and he converted a metal pole barn at his house to a studio. And I was up there a few years back, and he was showing me the stuff that he can do in a studio, and he does his mixing and stuff off of an iPad, and he's got this software that he can just sit there and play on his iPad, and manipulate everything. Whereas in the past, they'd have a studio console 6 feet long and stuff. And now it's just right there on his iPad.
Yeah, there was a bit in the McCartney 3-2-1 that I forget what song it was, but Reuben was and they were deconstructing a lot of the songs where they were just isolating like one particular track or something, and they found something, and Reuben said, "What's that? What's that sound?" And McCartney said, "Oh, that's a Moog synthesizer." And what happened was, and this might have been on one of the songs on Sgt. Pepper's, where they were at Abbey Road Studios, and McCartney said the great thing about Abbey Road Studios is that it was a big place and there were a lot of different people using it. He said, so there was a guy upstairs that were recording Sgt. Pepper's. And there was a guy upstairs who had a studio upstairs, and his name was John Moog, or whatever Moog's first name was. But he was up there, and he put his synthesizer up there, and they showed a picture of it, and it was just this big giant panel with cables and stuff in it, just covered an entire wall in a studio, and that was a Moog synthesizer, and Paul or John or George or somebody was up there noodling around with it one day with Mr. Moog, and so they just noodled around with it a little bit and then put it in a Beatles song.
Yeah, because I think at Abbey Road they had all different types of artists recording there, classical and
Right. Yeah.
other rock
Yeah.
bands.
Yeah. Well, they had
The Moog.
John Moog, or of Moog synthesizer fame, and they did. They showed a picture of his first Moog synthesizer that the Beatles used, and it was an impressive piece of equipment. It was huge.
All those tubes and transistors.
Yeah, yep. And you know what it looked like? It looked like the old pictures you used to see of like a telephone patch panel. You know, when you see the pictures of the operators sitting around and all those patch panels in front of them. That's what it looked like.
And I think about 6 years ago, I was out in Boulder, Colorado, and I toured this National Weather Center place out there. And part of the tour, you go down to the lower level, and they got this huge room. And according to the thing, it says that was where they housed the first Cray computer that the place got. And they have pictures of using forklifts to unload the computer elements, to put them in this room. And part of the thing says that first Cray supercomputer, the very first Apple iPhone, had greater computing power than this thing that filled an entire room. So I imagine today's version of the Moog is probably much more compact.
Yeah. Okay, guys, anything else you want to get in before we wrap it up?
I'm good.
Just two things. I've seen two of the Beatles perform individually. Of course, Paul on his New World tour in '93, it was a great show. He had the Average White Band. That was his backing musicians for them. And Linda was on stage. And of course, the song he opens with is Memory Hole. It was Drive My Car, which was great. And then Live and Let Die, which was, they shot the fireworks and all that up. That was great. And then with Ringo, it was, about 20 odd years ago in St. Louis, but it was at what they call Riverport. And it was with Ringo's all-star band.
Yeah.
Which, the bass player for that tour was Jack Bruce. The drummer was the drummer from Free. Then it had Eric Carmen. So it was, it was good to see Ringo do that. And I kept waiting. I said, I know he's going to do A Little Help from My Friends, but he didn't do it. Did he? And then he finally came out from the drum kit. He said, okay, folks, if you don't know the words to this next song, you'll have a long venue. And then they broke into A Little Help from My Friends. So.
Yeah, I saw Ringo a few years back at Starlight Amphitheater over in Kansas City, and it was a great show. And God, I wish I could age the way that guy does.
Oh my gosh. Well, he's been a vegetarian for quite a while.
Yeah, I guess maybe I should get off the red meat.
I was gonna say, I just saw a video of him somewhere. It was an interview he was doing just recently, and he looks pretty skinny and gaunt. I mean, he still looks like Ringo, but he's very skinny.
Yeah, maybe
very gaunt looking Ringo.
Yeah, and he turned 81 July 7th, which happens to be the same birthday as the granddaughter. She was born on July 7th, so I went out and bought a lottery ticket, 7/7, but nothing.
My Ringo version, he had Greg Raleigh from Santana and somebody from Men at Work and a guy from Asia, and I can't remember some of the others. So, they all did songs from their respective careers. So it was a good show.
Yeah, he was supposed to tour St. Louis last September, but due to COVID, it was all canceled. And I'm understanding he's going to tour again.
Oh, I was actually wondering if he's still doing that all-star band, because it's been a regular event for a lot of years.
Yeah, he had for a couple tours. He had Todd Rundgren on his band, who I've seen Todd Rundgren 2 different times in 2 different incarnations, but that's for another time. So.
I think he went out once with Burton Cummings, and Cummings is one of my favorite vocalists.
He's had an eclectic
Mix.
roster of musicians touring with them over the years. All right. Well, okay. Yeah. Check out the documentary, McCartney 321. If you have Hulu, go check it out. If you don't have Hulu, take advantage of I'm sure they give you a free trial week. Just go check that out. It's definitely worth your time.
I intend to.
And we're looking forward to Peter Jackson's The Beatles Get Back on around Thanksgiving, coming up on Disney Plus, which that's when I'll use my free trial to Disney Plus that week. I'm sure a lot of people will be doing. I'm saying, and that's a whole nother discussion that I was wanting to get into, but we just ran out of time. But there's a whole thing with with how the distribution channels have drastically changed in the last week or so for filmmakers. But anyway, that's a discussion. We'll take that up at some point in the future. Maybe we'll take that up when or on Thanksgiving week when this thing comes out. We'll see what it does to Disney Plus's subscription numbers.
Yes.
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 Yeah. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Please subscribe to our channel. Give us a like. Drop a comment down there below the video, and join us next week. I think next week Marissa's going to join us, and August the 1st, we're going to do a discussion of Yes, and specifically the album Fragile, and some other good things coming up. So take it easy, everybody.
All right.